It's 6 o'clock.
I tell them that we have a connection.
All right. Thank y'all for coming here tonight. Like always, we'll open our meetings up with prayer and we'll get things started. Pray with me. Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather here this evening. We ask that you watch over our loved ones. We ask that you watch over anyone that's hurting or sick. And we ask that everything that we do glorify your name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. First thing up is analysis of funding update. Brad, what do you have for us?
I don't want to take up a lot of time, but we'll just give you a little update on what we've been working on since we spoke last time. Our first thing is kind of a summary of the grants that we've put in for. Let's go on to that first slide. Okay, so we've submitted 5 grants on behalf of the city, 2 that are targeting the playground renovation at Demorest Springs Park, and then 3 that are looking at pedestrian right-of-ways and placemaking and really polishing up the downtown areas and the pedestrian ways in the city. And we're hoping to hear before the new year. We're hoping to hear something. If we got 1 or 2 out of those, I'd be ecstatic. Okay. Go on. Okay. So you all have put together a master plan for redoing Demorest Springs Park, and so that I'm kind of taking my hints from that plan that you all put together in 2021. We're getting inspired by the renovation of the playground area. We're being inspired by the, go ahead. You might have driven by Walker Mountain Elementary School and seen this very different kind of looking playground. And this playground is suited for kids who have all kinds of different abilities and accessibilities. Not all children, are stimulated the same way. Not all of them have the same capabilities. And this is a kind of an approach to playgrounds that is a little bit more inclusive to a lot of children. So you might have seen this at Walker Mountain. Let's go on to the next one. So there's different kinds of equipment than just the old swings, right? Most of us probably have had physical damage done to us at the playground at one time or another. I know I have, fallen off the jungle gym and things like that. So we're building them a little bit better these days. And it's let's go on and we'll show you just some of these pictures. And that's Walker Mountain. Let's go on and just see what a design guy has come up with for Demorest Springs Park. Just Ron, if you'll just go through those just ever so briefly, just go ahead. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So this is the flavor of what we're trying to do. And of course, I don't have expertise in these kinds of parks. So what we've done is we've partnered with some people who have some real experience and some real expertise in that kind of thing in this process. And so Emily, would you want to come up and introduce yourself? So Emily's kind of our subject matter expert, and I'm just going to invite you to introduce yourself and let them know what we're working on.
Okay. My name's Emily Heron. I'm a resident here. I live over closer to Hollywood. But we started a nonprofit, and we actually started to work with Cornelia first, but you guys have had a little bit more motivation, so we're a little bit farther along in the process. But our nonprofit is called Price to Play. And it's named after my little boy who's 7 years old and who has a developmental delay. And what we figured out with having a kid with a developmental delay is that not every playground is feasible for him. He's not physically disabled, but his brain is just a little bit farther behind than that of his peers. And he has some sensory stuff. So when we started therapy with him to do speech therapy, behavioral therapy, and things like that to help him get where he needs to be, we figured out that he did not want to do anything that anybody wanted him to do. And he was very stubborn, and you could not make him do it. And so the therapist brought out a box of trains one day, and it was like a switch flipped. And he totally opened the door to learn how to talk, to learn how to act, to learn how to do all these things. And it was through play. And so that kind of got me thinking, when we would go to playgrounds, he would sit on the ground and play with the rocks while his brother and other friends were swinging or were doing other things. And it was because he didn't feel comfortable on the swing, or he didn't feel comfortable on the slide. He felt unsafe, he felt out of control, and playing on a regular playground was not a good experience for him. And so seeing him learn through play, and I was a teacher before I do all of this. I'm kind of a stay-at-home mom now and a business owner. But seeing him learn through that play kind of changed my mind about how things work with kids. And so we started Cross to Play to try to help fund playgrounds that are accessible for kids who have disabilities, whether they're physical, whether they're intellectual. And it also opens a door for kids who don't have disabilities to come in contact with kids who do. Because 21% of people in the world have a disability today, whether it's physical, whether it's intellectual, and that's the world we're all going to be living in. These kids are growing up, and COVID made it worse. So we serve 1,200 kids in the special ed department here at Habersham County, but 15% of kids in the world have a disability, whether it's they're in a wheelchair, whether they're blind, whether they have autism or developmental delay. And so what we've looked at with this playground is it's an integrated play opportunity. So there's play equipment for regular everyday kids, and there's playground equipment for kids who have a wheelchair or who have a sensory issue. There's swings that they can strap into and swing really high and not feel like they're going to fall on the ground and crash. And so Cross to Play is partnering with you guys, and we're willing to help kind of fundraise a little bit as well, but also to bring an opportunity to not just Demorest, but Habersham County and the region as a whole, to give kids a place to play together, to get outside, to get off screens, to just be kids, because they're learning through play, they're growing through play, and they're creating a community through play. And if we can provide that for them, then I think it's a service that's really valuable. So.
Emily mentioned the musical.
Oh yeah, so we made sure to put in a few musical pieces because, like I said, there's not only stuff for kids with wheelchairs or kids with other things, but a lot of the sensory stuff, it opens a door for kids to, they play with the chimes, they play with the drums, and it just opens a whole new opportunity for them to be outside and to be learning through the music and using their hands and using their eyes. And we think that integrating the music type of thing, it brings in an opportunity for other people who maybe musically minded people that might want to help with some of the funding, but it also gives kids who might not be as athletic and want to climb and jump and do all of these things. They're still in a place, playing with music, doing the thing that is good for their brain, that's good for their heart and the things that they love to do, but they're all together. They're just doing different things and learning together and growing together and playing together.
Another thing, if you will, tell them about y'all's travel to research these different around the country.
Yeah, so the people that did the Walk a Mountain Playground, she had a similar experience. Her little girl is far more challenged than what we have dealt with. And so they started their journey about the same time as we did. And we've partnered with this group. They're out of Minnesota. It's the group is called Landscape Structures. And they are pioneers in the play world. The founder of their company was the very first person to create a continual play process, which is like a structure that you can climb up and slide down, and there's multiple parts of it. Instead of just a swing and a slide, continual play is like kind of the structure you saw on one of those slides. So it integrates a lot of different play aspects. So they're pioneers in the inclusive play. They're also pioneers just in regular play. And so we went to Minnesota this summer to tour their facility, to meet their founder, to learn about who they are. And they're one of the only companies in the world that develops play equipment that's not owned by private equity. The business itself is owned by their employees. So you guys all know how that works. The longer you work there, the more ownership you have in the company. Their ideals are just so kid focused, and I think it was amazing. We got to see how everything is made, from a bolt to a slide to the paint. Every single piece of the play equipment is made in America. None of it's made overseas. It's all made either in Minnesota or Texas, from the surfacing to the covers. It's all made in the USA. It's durable. It's legit. It's innovative. It's beautiful. I was amazed by what this place is doing, and the guy that we're working with is helping us design it. They're pioneers. They're just doing things that other people aren't doing, and so it was a really good learning experience and exciting to kind of work with a group like that's doing really cool things for kids.
Guys, I brought this idea because this Walker Mountain is near my house, so it's just outside of Claremont. And you kept seeing this design coming with all these colorful pictures. Finally, it opened up. We went to it. This is a nonprofit in Hall County, New Sandra Deal Elementary School, that opened up a couple months ago. That's their second project they've completed, and they're working on the third project at East Hall, raising that money. And it's
a lot.
It's just shy of $1 million. And when I sent that to y'all, I told y'all we would have to raise some funds. And with Emily's help in all this, she has agreed, if y'all would like her to be the champion for this project, where she and me and others, y'all, will go see different businesses, different people, to ask for the donations for this. And so there'll be some things that's got to be set up, so forth. I mean, the city doesn't have the money, and this is to be a community-wide project. It's not just for the citizens of Demorest. And it's far-reaching, and it's pretty amazing when you do go visit this place. It's got the rubber mats. It's got being blind and reading Braille. It's got stories of challenged athletes, how they can shoot a bow and arrow with no hands, use their feet, things of that sort. So it's a lot of different examples. A history on Helen Keller. It's got some obstacle courses with some marbles and different things.
And something that we kind of, what they're doing, Hope for Hall is that organization, and their goal is to put an inclusive playground at every school in Hall County. And so what we wanted to do is just put as many inclusive playgrounds as we could. We're not necessarily trying to partner with schools, but I think it's a community thing, because I don't know about you guys, but until I had a little boy, and even as a teacher, I didn't really realize what a family of a special needs kid goes through. And especially, like I said, after COVID, with kids being, shut out of their therapies or away from everybody, the increase in developmental delays and in autism and in all of these other things, these kids are like struggling. They are having, they got put back years. And when you look at the effect that this has on these kids, like I said with Christ, like we had gone to therapy for 1.5 years. We were paying for it out of our own pocket. And he would literally climb under the table and just hold his ears and hide his face. And when those trains came out that day, it was like a total change. And that's what play does. And I think that if you give kids an opportunity to come out here and learn and grow, but also my little boy who is gifted and is way above his intellectual level, his older brother, being around his brother who has a special need, it's changed him. Like it's let him see that just because somebody's different doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same opportunities. And I think that play kind of levels the field, it opens that door, and it gives them an opportunity to be together. And that's the kind of adults that they're going to be, not grow up and be uncomfortable around somebody in a wheelchair or uncomfortable around somebody who's blind because they've just never been around it and they don't know how to act. But when they grow up together, play side by side, go down the slide together, push each other on the swing, they get to see that everybody's a person and we all have the same goals and dreams and hopes that they can come together and achieve if they are comfortable with that from a very early age. And I think that's a really great opportunity as a community to do it. And the more I talk to people, some folks at Fielddale, some folks at Johnson & Johnson, so many people have kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews who their life was totally fine and normal until their nephew was born and he had Down syndrome, or their niece was in a car accident and she now is in a wheelchair. And people are ready to get behind this. The homeschool families, the 1,200 kids that are serving in Habersham County schools, the teachers that teach those kids, This is a cause that people will get behind, and I think that it won't be as hard as we think it is to raise the money for it. Because like I said, like you said, they've done 3, Hope for Hall. The first one was $800,000. The second one was, I think, $400,000 or $500,000. So they've raised well over $1 million, and they're just going strong, keeping going. So, like you said, I'm happy to do anything I can. I'll ask people for money. I'll talk to anybody because it's a cause I think that's worth seeking.
I think with the grant opportunity that's in front of us and Emily championing behind it and partnering with her and her foundation, I think we can get it done.
And Dave, I'm sorry, Brad, you were just looking after, when we get approved, how much time do we have to raise our portion?
Well, we'll, if we're selected to be invited to apply, then really the application isn't really, that's another year process.
Okay.
So we still have another year to work on the fundraising.
Perfect.
Very good.
Thank you, guys.
All right, let's go to the next slide if we could, please. All right, so we've gone over 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5 are, let's go to the next slide, are the street projects. You guys have seen this in other workshops. These are projects that you're familiar with. Let's go ahead and go on to the next one. We've got the Main Street, 441. We've got around City Hall. Let's go ahead and go one more and around the park. Okay, and then all the way down 441 West Central Avenue. Okay, and if we were to get one of these, that would be marvelous. It would be marvelous, and our match for this, the expense of these are in the millions. Our match is about $15,000.
With 3 of them?
Yeah, yes, sir. Let's right here. Yeah. So they're asking us to put in 15. If we got 1 or 2, that'd be wonderful. And that's a good leverage, right? 15,000 for 5 million.
If we get 1 of 3, is it less or is it still?
We're gonna need to put up $15,000. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, let's go on to the next one if we could. Okay, and this is just a summary of what's in your, and what we just talked about. Okay. Okay, so this is the next steps. So we're just in the pre-application. Hopefully we're invited to apply. We'll apply. Then that application has to be accepted. And then the grant has to be awarded. Then we implement the grant. And then we have to close out and be accountable for everything that we've spent. So those are the steps that we have remaining. Okay?
Very good.
Any questions about that?
Brad, if you will, we just found out about another grant that's not in this, because we're early in the stages of it.
Right. We got notification from GMA about a state cybersecurity money program that actually came out last year, but Georgia did not roll it out until this year. It's some federal money. Right now, I think Megan and staff are working on looking at some of the upgrades that we need in some of our software and our hardware. Windows 10 is outdated and not being supported, and so we're having to go to Windows 11, and that represents a cost that you all will have to bear. So we're actually hoping to supplant some money that you're going to have to spend with some outside money, and so there's an opportunity there that we're putting together. We'll probably apply for that here towards the end of the month. We're working with Chuck Ansley over at what is Chuck's called his company now, ACG.
Yeah.
With ACG, I've known Chuck for 20 years, and we've gone over kind of what your needs are and how we might be able to improve those things. Cybersecurity is an issue, and small municipalities are targeted by hackers. They have the impression that they're low-hanging fruit, that they're easy to victimize, and particularly utility departments, of which we have a substantial one. So that's something we've just, that's not on our list because that just come out last week. And so we're hoping to apply and supplant that money, and that's just gonna be a savings in the budget if we can get that.
Last week, or a week before, Megan and I met with Chuck. And with Windows 10 going out October next year, is that right? Some of our computers can't accept Windows 11. So we all have an inventory list, and they're going back confirming those and how many we would have to replace to be able to do that expense in 2025. And this just popped up through GMA, and I said,
Go
"Can this
for it."
work?" And Brian got excited, Chuck got excited, so they've been working on that and going through that list of computers.
Yeah, it took me and Chuck about 48 hours to say, oh, we need to go for this, right? We looked at it, looked at the city's needs, and hopefully we can supplant some regular expense that save you just some rudimentary stuff that you're gonna have to spend anyway. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Emily and Brad, y'all do not have to stay. If you don't want to, you can be excused.
I'm going to go to supper.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, guys. Next is allocating the ARPA funds. Mark, what do you have on this?
All right, we've got remaining $441,711 dollars left. Thank you. And we have to turn in a list by December 20th, December 30th, end of the month. And I have on this list, that we've gone through this several discussions. I've got the SCADA computer system for the water and sewer department at a round number 149,000. I've got the water model of 73,000 that EMI is working on as we speak. I've got the DECOA connection, which is the cutoffs that Brian needs to be able to have it go with combine itself with SCADA and to control those items there. As y'all know, we were awarded $100,000 from GFA to go toward our lead and copper. We've allocated roughly 30,000 of that for EMI and all the things that they did. And if you remember, we put it out to bid to have all these 3,721 meters to be checked individually. Well, the monies that they allocated and the bids came in, we couldn't match that. So we used our inside labor with Brian and his fantastic crew. But when you use your own crew, you either have to send the difference of that grant back, you cannot use it to pay yourself for those expenses, or you can buy new equipment and it would be 50%. We would have to match 50%. And the two items that Brian has on his list is a new Bobcat backhoe and a ground sonar that where they can check where the pipes are and check for leaks. That's something he's never had, and that cost us $36,000. So between and the cost of the Bobcat's like $85,000. We also would trade in our other existing one, and so I allocated $40,000, and I called it the GFA grant contribution if we still need that. But otherwise, we got to send $70,000 back. So we can get 50%, and the city would have to match that 50%. And then got 17 fire hydrants, and that's a cost of around a number of $97,000. That's like basically $6,000 a piece for fire hydrants. And then worked with Dave in our fire department for turnout gear. I put on here fire hose, that should not be included in there. But it's the turnout gear and the turnout gear storage, so $43,500. And that totals that $441,000. So if y'all agree with this and vote on this, what we would do is attach, for when Megan has to turn this in next month, we would attach each one of our bids or our contracts that we have for this to go to certify what we're doing with this money. And this money has to be spent by the end of 25. Was it 26? 25? I think it's 25.
It needs to be allocated by.
The end of the year, but it's gotta be spent by 2025, yes. So all this money will have to be spent by the end of 2025, or we'd have to return it, and I don't know what all the details could be if we didn't. So we will work off of this list, and we have until December 30th to reconfirm something if something changes on this list.
I think we've talked about this several times. Council, y'all have anything you'd like to add or discuss about these property money being spent? All right.
And just scratch fire hose off that list. You will.
All right, we're ending this here pretty quick. Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add to this, or council, y'all have anything you'd like to add?
Do we want to go ahead and do my city manager report?
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
First of all, I do have a addition to the agenda that y'all so approved. Y'all look on your package on your left side, Communications International. You'll see an invoice like that. Back in December 27th of 2023, we were working with FEMA and our grant writer to purchase the fire radios at the end of last year. You'll see on this thing, on this invoice, where we have a credit of $9,369.57. That was the amount we needed to pay as part of the grant, and we did. And then our consultant, our grant writer was working with FEMA. And I just assumed that FEMA paid the company direct. And never paid any more about it. And you see, this invoice is dated 10/16/2024. So I just got this the other day, and I'm like, what do you mean we haven't paid this money? Because they got our 10%. We had allocated paying that $81,196.19. Come to find out, we started using Traditions Bank starting January 1st. And I'm like, where did this $81,000 go? Well, it went into that account that we don't use anymore. So we have the money. I didn't realize we didn't pay it. And so what I'm asking y'all to do is reapprove this invoice that we have the money to go ahead and pay this for those radios.
This was,
And they never sent us a notice or anything for roughly 10 months.
that money is 100% correct.
Yes, yes. So I ask y'all to add that to the agenda. If this is approved, I got with the check and go out Thursday to them. They're aware of my error.
Thank you. No late fees.
Same amount.
Do we already have these radios?
They're letting us prepay them because we don't want them, because we don't want your warranty starting until the county is up and running with the whole system. And we owe for the remaining balance of the police
Right.
$59,000 that we've got in the budget for next year.
Sure.
The next item, you'll see something like this. This is the final invoice for Piggett's Construction for Hazel Creek Bridge. Our contract was for $483,715,000. And with that, the top part up here, you'll see roughly $55,000. That's the cost overruns. 5,700 of that was for Piedmont, their maintenance building. It was when they found out they weren't hooked up to the sewer all these years. So we had to hook them up doing that. The other override is $49,517 in rock charges. And the rock was hit across from Ms. Weichels' property there when we had to run that sewer line. And then, of course, it was hit right there at Demorest Lake.
Yeah.
So they hit the rock, they call Turnipseed, they send out an engineer inspector. They do their measuring of how much rock they're having to hit, and that's where the rock clause comes into play. So other than the rock in Piedmont Sewer, we were dead on. So our final payout is $139,200,000, which puts our total contract at $539,000. Again, this is paid fully by the city.
It was an unplanned DOT project.
Right. And so this is all cash from there. There's no DOT money, there's no grant money. This is just our cost. So that was just point of information, because that's approved in that, we approved the contract, and each check will be in our accounts payable tomorrow, and he'll pick it up on Thursday. So that was just a point of reference for y'all there. Then today, we met, Brian, Megan and I met with Fletcher discussing Garrison Road well. You know, we've got the option we talked about. One option, I'm just gonna use round numbers, is $2 million if we're going to run the water from Garrison Road to Baldwin. And we would own a million gallons of that water in their plant. That's where their plant can treat 4 million to what?
Per day.
Per day. It can produce 1,350,000 gallons a day. So roughly 40 million gallons there. And, in a month. So we would restructure the plan is we want to restructure our existing contract. We're, I think, the third year into that 10-year contract, because we would have to, per EPD, give Baldwin that asset. And, but we would be guaranteed owning that 1 million gallons. And we would have a charge somewhere in just the treatment, the basic treatment of that. Those are details to be worked out. So the other option is to build a water plant a few hundred yards from that location for 1 million gallons a day. Round numbers, $5 million. But that water in that zone cannot get to the entire layout of the pipes. And that's where additional cost of $4 to $5 million comes into play, because we gotta lay additional lines to get it throughout the entire system. So you look at 10 million, you look at 2 million. And if we fund this through GFO on the Baldwin, Brian can do the work in his crew, save us $1 million. But if you take GFO money, you can't do the project yourself. So my next step is, where we getting $1 million, if we're not getting it for GFO at 2 or 3%. So we've got some things that we're working on, and Thomas today did the research from the bond in 2016, because when they do the bond, they take the entire assets of everything. But there's language in there that we feel like we could address if we choose to do that. We were supposed to meet with Baldwin. That meeting's been canceled. I thought the meeting was on the 14th. They thought the meeting was on the 12th. And then once our council meeting was moved to the 12th, we got to come up with a new meeting date. So, but that meeting and the follow-up from Fletcher today is very important for us to get some things on paper so y'all can look at it. I've asked Fletcher to give us some debt service options. I've asked him to show us some income projections with our lower operating cost. Because again, if we can get this water around the entire system, we won't be taking as much water from Toccoa, and we wouldn't be, because our maximum right now with Baldwin is 2 million gallons a day, with our minimum is 1,150,000 a day. So that way we could use that water to save some operating costs. So that's the next thing I've asked Fletcher to get, so y'all can understand, if you have $2 million in debt, what does this do? Because right now, when I get to the financials, we'll talk about the debt of the water and sewer department. I talked to Barry Church about the wreaths across America again. That is set up for the 14th of December. And he and I are working on a speaker for that day and the time. And so we're gonna have him here at the next meeting to donate $2,000 to that operation for our veterans. And out there, we cover everything from Civil War, obviously, all the way current, that it goes back that far.
You said December 14th?
Yep,
It was a very nice ceremony last year.
yeah. They're able to do some things different. Everybody doesn't have to do it at 12 o'clock. They're looking to do it at 10, 12, because they do 3 or 4 of them, where they can spread that out like that. I told y'all about the lead and copper. When we went through the lead and copper, they had to check both sides of the meter to make sure what was the service line from our side and the property owner's side. And we found 2 houses that had the lead and copper on their side, which means we have some in that same area. And we met on this because legally we have to get a letter sent to these 2 residents that tells them what we found. This is mandated by the federal government. And we would tell them when we're gonna fix our side. There is an option where it says we can fix their side, and you have an email about going on private property. And so, we'll see how these 2 houses shake out. But none of y'all that I believe are either one of these 2 folks. Because we can't make them change their side. We can heavily encourage them to, because it's an expense to them. Unless this mandate lets us do that for them. So,
Somebody's not gonna be looking forward to that lottery.
yeah. So, again, our guys did 3,794 meters out of 7,200 in 18 days with 8 guys working. So it was pretty amazing what they did. And I did ask Fletcher how many of his other clients used an outside contractor. Only Raven County. Everybody else, their funds weren't enough, and they had to do it just like we did. In closing out our checking accounts at United Community, we have some outstanding checks. Majority of them appear to be refunds from deposits, refunds from closed accounts, and there could be some other things in there. And I have sent to Thomas, because by law, if we don't refund this money to the people, some of the checks go back to 2021. Obviously, they're past most expiration dates. 3 or 4 just have cashed this last week, dated January and February of 2024, and here we are in November. I don't know what happens. And if we can't find these folks to give them a new check, we have to turn the money over to the state. So there'll be more of that coming out once Thomas, and we talk with the CPAs, Megan, and look at that to see what we can do. I don't know if you can run an ad and list these people's names. They could be deceased, they could be moved, and they may never see it, but a family or a friend can see this and call and say, hey, you could have something here. So
Isn't there a website for like state?
there is, but we gotta turn it over first. Then that's something they can do. Fire hydrants, I had told y'all, roughly we have 55 that are down. And Ryan and his crews last week corrected 24 by their maintenance. And so I had 28 for them still to check. The oldest one that he found on that list, because they got all the year, the date, the company, to see can we find anything for these fire hydrants that are down without paying the $6,000. One over here at the end of Walnut and Holly that's out of service, 1941. We have another one that's back that way toward Piedmont that is still working from 1929. We don't touch it though. That one will have to change out, but the valves to cut off the water has to let the water stop the water going all the way to the hospital. There's no cutoffs from back in the day. So we kind of tell folks don't use that in case there's a problem. Because one of the things that hasn't been done, and our fire department and the chief has been doing, he has to inspect these. Well, it was during the summer and we were having so much drought, we had to stop. because he was just running that water out, and we had such high demands for the water. So, I told y'all about the total on the bridge, and then I have talked with Fletcher from EMI about our development standards. This is another part, a separate part of what Thomas's contract was to do. And development standards are a developer wants to come to town, he looks at our ordinances, and it tells you how to build a subdivision, the streets, lots, everything in there. There's not a lot of questions. His engineers look at this, they make it go that way. We also do the same thing with when the developer comes in on water and sewer. Here's our standards, here's what you have to do. This lays this out there. So I've asked Fletcher to give us giving y'all back in time development standards and use Baldwin. So, we'll see other options that are out there that y'all can look at and see, just like we've done with the land use here. Have a couple meetings, invite the public, invite some developers who are out there, and they can come give their input. So that's something else hopefully we'll have pulled together by the next meeting. Anything you want to add to that? But again, this is all separate than what Thomas has done. All right, that being said, we'll go to our reports here. So that's on tab 5. In our water and sewer and streets, emergency locates were 11, locates were 208, work orders were 204. We repaired 12 leaks, and our loss of water from leaks is 634,000 gallons. We bought from Baldwin 48 million gallons for the month, 11 million from Toccoa, and 6 million we didn't buy, we used from our buys as well. Total round number, that's 65 million gallons, and his loss was 630,000 of 65 million gallons. And we're down from 68 million the month before. As the weather starts cooling, we'll see some of those numbers less. And we had water meter sales for the month is 8, and those cost $3,015 on the minimum side, depending on what size somebody would need. On our sewer treatment plant, we're operating within our limits, and the same thing with our drinking water. We go to our police department. Casey and his guys had 414 calls for the month of September, 6 domestic, 3 physical, and 3 verbal, 20 incident reports, 9 accidents, 114 traffic stops, and 19 citations, which is 19%. So I guess they gave out a lot of warnings right there. Officers made 4 arrests, and they completed 29 hours of training. On our fire department for the month of September, we had 42 rescue and emergency medical service incidents, good intent call where they're doing a goodwill check if somebody calls in. There's 23 of those. False alarm and false calls are 9. Hazardous condition, no fire, is 5. Service call is 5. Severe weather and natural disaster was 3, and 3 fire calls. The other part that I asked our chief to do, who is doing the code enforcement, he's got a list in here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. He's got 28 cases that he's working on from various incidents that you see here. Tomorrow we have our municipal court, and we will have our first property owner sitting in this room tomorrow to deal with their errors that they've made on construction without permits, etc. So, but so they're pretty busy on that side too. If you'll flip a couple more pages all the way to the financials, starting on page 1. And again, our financials run 45 days behind. So the financials we're going to talk about is dated September 30th. And on the right-hand side, he shows cash balances yesterday from November 11th, just because they're balancing everything out. So our cash right now, we're still in an excellent position overall with our reserves. At the end of the month, we had operating cash of $101,000. As of yesterday, we had $326,000. And when you go down to the average monthly expenses based on an annual budget, general fund had $236,000 in monthly expenses, and the water and sewer fund had $623,000, or a total of $858,000 in total monthly expenses from water and sewer, and then total with general fund. And when we talk about general fund, you'll see in a minute what our revenue is for the general fund. You can see we started to come up on our months of liquidity, where we had been stuck at 2, where he's at 2.01, which is our goal. We work to get back to 3. On the second page, you'll see the debt structure. Right now, our total debt with water and sewer, round number is $7.5 million. We pay $63,000 a month with 3 loans to JEPA, which is the state, and 1 to the 2016 bond. So the bond started out at $7.5 million, it's down to $5.1 million. And I say that because when we talk about Garrison Roadwell and debt, you know, you start seeing how much we pay out in debt service and how much income something's got to produce to be able to handle this. So if you'll go to page 4, it's not numbered at the bottom, but it is the general fund, dated September 30th. You will see the current total revenue for the month, $20,381,000. So $20,000 was the gross revenue for the general fund. And we had expenses back here of $236,000. And that leads us to the water transfer. So that's where we got to continue monitoring that deficiency that we have to pull from the water transfer. So that's where we had to pull in this month $200,000 in a transfer to cover these expenses. Next line down, you can see the SPLOST for the month of October, which we've been averaging roughly $32.5 a month. And I'll show you in a minute where that total is. Go to page 5. That shows you our monthly revenue and expenses for the water and sewer. And so we're on track to have some savings in our expenses for the water and sewer. If we look through these, because you got 3 months left to go. And so everything is working as projected with our changes and et cetera. So the page 7 is the SPLOST total. That's our SPLOST total right now, $384,000. But I just wrote, Sean and I will sign a check tomorrow for that $139,000 for the final payment of Higgins Construction. So we'll be less that going forward at this point in time.
I'm sorry, Mark, where's that again? I'm sorry.
That's just my notes right here.
Okay.
And so again, you have the copy of the final pay
Right.
in there that shows that. So
That's right.
384,000 minus the 139. I don't like to do math without a calculator in public. 384 minus 139. We'll leave $245,000 in SPLOST dollars, with us averaging $32.5 a month so far.
Okay.
We had budgeted $30,000 a month in there. So, and then our Other payments that we had that come out of SPOS dollars is the annual payment in February, would be March of 93,000 for the fire department, and in August 46,000 for the police cars.
Right.
So right now, 25 and 26 is our 2 years left of those annual payments. So that's where we are financially. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? All right. All right. Y'all have anything? Yeah. Y'all have anything else y'all would like to talk about? All right, let's take a 9-minute recess. What about that? for allowing us to gather here this evening. We ask that you remind us that we are here for a community that we all love. And we ask that you watch over us and protect us, protect our loved ones. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming tonight. First, we have approval of the agenda. We have one modification, and that's to add Communications International Bill. Let's add that as the new number 8. Is there any other additions or changes? If not, we need a motion to move forward.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, sir. A second? All those in favor? All right. First, we have appearance and public comment. So we have 3 times for that this evening. Right now is appearance and public comment for anything other than the public hearing, which is going to be for land use. So if you're here to speak on anything other than land use, or what's in front of us, it'll be next. Please step forward to the podium and state your name and address and speak. Yes, sir.
Kenneth Ronald, 224 Church. So I just have a couple questions in regards to, I watched something, I think it's one of the council members in regards to fire department units, near my heart. So I just have a couple questions and comments in regards to some of that. Is that okay?
Yes, sir, please.
There was mention about potential purchase of a mini pumper. I'm just curious what the mini pumper would entail in regards to tank, hose, ladder, capacity.
Okay. So some of these answers that we might have, some of the answers to your questions we might have, but I'll make sure.
Okay. I didn't know if he could, the fire chief could answer. Second question would be, there was comment in regards to the ladder truck. Why is that out of service? Is it out of service? And for what repairs would it be?
Mark, I'll let you take that.
Chief, if you'll come forward, please, sir. We've got a list from the last 3 years of the issues in previous 2 years. And the year before that one, it's all still the same issues. That they haven't been fixed in 3 years. The total is estimated at $150,000. I'll let Chief explain.
Yeah, $150,000 is the estimate to fix it. There's multiple electrical problems where we're running down the road, truck shuts off. There are hydraulic issues. There's a fuel tank hanging off of it that has to be custom rebuilt for $6,000 to $8,000. I mean, there's a number of problems with the ladder truck, and we don't have the money to fix it. $150,000 is the estimate.
Okay, so I'll go back to the first question, the mini pumper. What is that?
Well, the mini pumper didn't get approved, but it's a mini pumper with 1,500 gallon per minute pump with 300 gallons of water and able to carry 800 foot of supply hose for a rapid response when on scene.
And ladder capacity?
24 foot extension, 14 foot extension,
Okay.
a folding ladder.
So it would meet. Okay. Question in regards to staffing. How are we looking at staffing? Because it was addressed that you had to have 4 people on duty.
That's correct. I have to have four people responding to every possible structure fire, and I do not have that.
You don't have to have them on duty, you have to have them respond.
I don't have anything other but what's on duty. I don't have any volunteers, part-timers that live in the city other than one.
You have, okay, but if they're responding, then that meets it.
So
If you have 2 on duty, and how many is on the roster?
12, right? There are 12 total, 10 of them are part-time.
Okay.
So I asked you, Mr. Rinaldi, to answer the question is, I can't expect my guys who are working in Dawson County on duty to come. I can't expect my guys in Cornelia to come on duty. My guys that didn't have that, they all work in the departments. There's no reliable system to get to 4.
I am, okay.
Statistics has already shown that. We bought a reporting system early in the year and we're able to look at statistics and we're not meeting that minimum requirement. There's about 40% of the time we meet the
Fires inside the city?
when you don't meet a structure fire response, they don't look at that. They look at brush fires, vehicle accidents, car fires, the fire alarms. They start looking at everything when you don't have a structure fire.
Okay. So the assistant chief, is he, what capacity is that?
He's a part-time employee.
Okay.
He's a full-time firefighter in another county.
So when is he with you on duty? Because then.
There are days where we're both on duty and there'd be 4, but it doesn't guarantee me 4 people all the time. And so when we looked at our statistics,
You can't count all to be full, right?
I can only count 0.25%.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But in that statistic of 4, the chief does count. A chief will count as a 4. When you start talking about staffing models and looking at meeting the number 16 and 18 and 36, those numbers, that's where you start counting. I only go 2.25%. But in the minimum of 4, in the very entry, beginning part of the ISO manual, it will tell you have to have 4 responding and the chief counts as well.
Right, but if there's 2 chiefs, they don't both count for 2.
They would, because I can count him as a firefighter.
Chief, we'll get some of these questions back on the table a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was all. And then, yeah, that was my biggest thing, because it seemed like you were saying that the response has to be 4, but then you want to be on duty, but if you have a roster and they can come in.
But I don't have anybody that's able to come in. That's the issue I'm running into.
Okay.
I don't have what happened, we had a year and a half, 2 years ago, where there were firefighters all over the city.
Okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
All right. There's a couple others, but I can get them private.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for bringing that.
Okay.
I would love for you to go by with Mark and go through those. Okay, very good. Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
You knew it.
I'm Marie Evans, 101 Long Street.
I have a couple of questions besides the other main issue that a lot of us have. But
I've been going on the website of the city, and I don't see yet the minutes for the September or the October meeting. When are those minutes going to be posted?
Okay. Megan, when is that requested?
I'll have to check on the September. They should already be posted, but October, they're not posted until I have them approved. So the October 1st minutes, they'll approve tonight.
And then the other is, we've gone through, well, we've had 4 revisions that have been handed out, even, counting the 4th being the tables. But yet, if you go on the website, it's still the very first zoning ordinance. Because I went on there this afternoon and I pulled up the very first zoning ordinance, and that's the one I had to look at. And I know we've had a couple of more changes in regard to the zoning ordinance.
Well, it should be there, we've talked about it. I mean, we'll have to verify that. If you'd called me today or earlier, I could have.
Well, I was still looking at it.
I understand, but we can verify that, I just can't do it now.
And the other thing I wanted to ask about, kind of on the heels of the other gentleman asking about the fire questions. Back on November the 8th, the Northeast Georgian had put in an article about the county possibly consolidating city fire departments. Is Demorest going to be participating in that? Or are we going to keep it separate?
We are going to learn and go to the meeting. I discussed at a chamber meeting, because Chairman Ty Higgins brought up service delivery to all the cities that were there. And he said, if there's something y'all want to talk about, to look at service delivery, bring it up and let's invite everybody and let's come see. And so I stood up and said about our fire department and our fire issues and our needs for the fire department, our needs for ISO after we spoke to one of the vice presidents of ISO who told us the requirements. ISO is a third-party audit that is funded by insurance companies around the country. And this team comes in, a 100-point checklist, and the first item on there is what Ken was talking about. You must have 4. If you don't have 4, the ISO audit is over right there. Because if you can't supply that, there's no reason to go anywhere else.
Right.
You only have
I've heard that before.
I understand, but we have one fire department. Cornelia can cover their 4, because they have 2 fire departments with 2 men in them, or 2 firefighters in them. They can cover that. I would have to hire the staff. I told them, 4 guys, counting the chief and the assistant chief, but the chief could be in the meeting. He could be doing code enforcement at that point in time. And with that is the additional cost, the additional benefits, because right now, I have to look back at the number of calls. Chief, how many calls do you average a day?
That's come down to about 2 there.
So I would have 4 firefighters for 2 calls a day. And that expense is extremely expensive. The chief gave the list of the deficiencies of the department. Our ISO records from the last inspection there's things in there that we don't have. There were things stated in that report that we don't have. And so we know we're going to have a difficult time. They're coming in to see Habersham County in 2025. And when they come in like that, they're mutual aid partners. They have to go inspect them to make sure they're meeting what Habersham is saying we're doing. So the other fire cities will have that same inspection. We have to meet a minimum flow of roughly 3,500 gallons. Is that correct, Chief?
That's right.
Right now, I have an engine that can produce 1,500. Now, if I have the ladder truck, I can produce it. The ladder truck's gonna cost me 150. All that being said, we have a lot of deficiencies over so many years going past.
Well, if we wind up consolidating the city with the county, will we be, and if they qualify with all that 100 pages of whatever, will then we be protected so our ISO and our insurance rates won't be going up individually?
Well, let me answer part of that first, and I'll come back to that. If you cannot meet the 4 minimum, we're 3 right now. The county's a 5. If you cannot meet that minimum, you will automatically go to a 10.
Right.
And that's the first problem, because if you have a mortgage on your home, it's that you're required by law to have property insurance. You could not possibly, everybody hear that, possibly could not provide that insurance because the insurance companies pull out. They don't want to cover you if there's not that service. So the intent would be, if we go through this process and it's something that these 5 guys decide to do, we could house the engine in there. Instead of a ladder truck, you could have an ambulance sitting right there rather than 5, 6, 7 miles away. And then the ladder truck would come from the county. Their ladder truck is down 2 as we speak, and they just ordered $1.5 million, $1.6 million new ladder truck. The only ladder truck that's operating is Cornelius new one, and I want to say Clarksville's got one too, Dave.
I don't know if it's
Okay, so we know for sure that Cornelius is in service. That's the only one in the entire county.
Clarksville got one in service.
Who does?
Clarksville.
That's what he was saying. He thought it may be out.
They're in
Just saying.
service.
Okay.
I'll keep it up there.
All right, thank you, Frank. So all those expenses, all these opportunities of these costs from a budget standpoint, because you came to the budget meetings, you heard.
I did,
Yeah.
that's the reason why I remember about the fire department.
Okay, because it would cost us an additional $700,000 plus the cost of additional truck in here, things of that sort. We're going the county is bringing in a fire consolidation consultant that will go through this, that we'll all hear next Thursday. He will say what the process is going to be, how they will study employee benefits. Because right now, I've got 3 full-time firefighters. I've got an open space. So these 3 could be a 4th one, if they will look at our benefits to see how that compares to the county. They will look at the overall structure of our building. They will look to see, could they take that building over? We have sinking issues because of the weight of that heavy ladder truck. It's reinforced, but there's some issues. And then we will take all of our assets that the fire department has, trucks, gears, gear, turnout, everything. And Dave is working on a list of every asset that we have in the city. The county then would come look and say, okay, if you're missing all these items, it's going to cost us X number to bring the station up to speed. So it will be a lot of information. It's not going to be a 30-day process. It could be a 6-month process to get to the bottom conclusion of the consultant's recommendation, and then whatever city that wants to look at it, then that's where the talks go. This isn't a quick.
The Demorest is going to be.
We're going to be. That's the main thing, is to get information.
Now, the other thing I'm here to talk about is that property of Johnny Gunn's right across the street from where I live.
Okay.
Are y'all ready to listen to it?
So I will say that I think we've all heard a lot on that property, and that property is not up for zoning. They haven't submitted a zoning application, they haven't submitted plans. It's kind of been rumored at this point with a picture. And I think it's great to hear what everyone's thoughts are, so we know how to proceed when that time comes. Something comes up for zoning, but it's not necessarily in front of us tonight.
Well, most everybody that is here, I've met with a lot of them, and I have been talking to them in regard to what's supposed to be coming down the pike about that being changed. And from the way we all understand is Johnny Gunn owns it, and he wants to sell it to someone who's gonna wind up putting some duplexes on it. And a lot of us are very much against that particular idea.
Yeah, so right now, if we pass the current zoning map tonight, Mark, with that current zoning on that piece, what would be the process to take that in front?
And we will walk through that. When Thomas does his walkthrough, we're going to, I met with a possible developer on Friday. He doesn't live here, he lives in another part of the county. He doesn't know that all y'all have problems with this. He has no idea. He told me that. He says, what? And so he is not into, he's sold his business, he's retired. All he's looking to do is build some rental property. And I said, well, this is what you're going to deal with. And he's like, you're kidding me. I said, no, this is, and I told him, I went through the list. Here's the money that you have to spend, things that you would have to come in and turn into me. He thought he was coming to the meeting tonight to have a meeting. I said, nope, that's not how this works. Thomas will walk through every item that he has to turn in to the city. Then we will review all those items to make sure he's checked off every list. He's got to have site plans. He's got to have landscaping plans. He's got to have architectural drawings. It's not just show up to see if I can get it. We're expecting a full package so that everybody knows exactly what he would be asking these 5 guys to rezone. Here's the details of what I'm doing.
Well, the question that a lot of us have is he's so adamant about putting duplexes there. Is there any other idea that he has floated out?
We didn't go down that path. Main thing what I was doing was educating him on our process and the forms and what he would have to spend up front just to come into this meeting. I encouraged him to have a neighborhood meeting. I encourage people who are going to rezone something, go meet with the other side. Find out their facts better. The biggest issue in rezones is misinformation. misinformation. We all told a secret story right here. By the time we got to the end, totally different. Because all we have is a drawing, no comments, no write-up about what he's doing. We're looking at a piece of paper.
Right.
We're
And
just
that's why-
assuming, though, is until I get an application and we check it off that we got a full application, nothing is happening.
Well, that drawing in and of itself is why a lot of the neighborhood in the community,
Sure.
up and down Long Street and Main Street, have an issue with it. For one thing, we're very concerned about the traffic level. The other thing is about the possibility of some issues going over there. Because I'll flat tell y'all right now, me being where I'm at, I mean, the property's here, Long Street here, I'm right here. Noise, any type of issues going on there, police department might as well know, I'm gonna be on the phone. And if I know any of y'all gonna be hearing my voice along with it, because that area is very residential, and a lot of us already agree that it's very quiet. It is a residential, a lot of people are older, and they're living next door to her. And the other issue that we have is that if there is any type of issues going on in that particular piece of property, you're talking about a 1 acre lot. But if there's issues going on there, property values, we can afford for our property values to go down, which is going to be a result of it all. Plus also the traffic up and down the road. And I don't know whether or not y'all have talked to anybody in regard to law enforcement about the amount of traffic that already Demorest Mount Airy hits and how many students that are there at the Demorest Elementary and the middle school, that traffic that comes up and down that road. We see it, we hear it 24/7. I'm retired and I hear it on a daily basis. And honestly, to add more traffic on there and the other issues that will be really bearing down on the city, the water, the sewage, anything else that you can think of, there's a lot of us that really do not agree with that being put up as a duplex.
The best part is we don't have an application.
And
And all we've got is and I know y'all have an issue about us, you think that we're jumping the gun. The drawing, I got from the city. And that drawing is what they're proposing, and that's the reason why you got so many of us in an uproar. Because that drawing, which was provided to us, we didn't just,
I put
make
that
it
up.
up.
I sent it to all of them. I gave it out at City Hall. And so there was nothing to hide. That's all I got. I didn't receive anything else but that picture.
Yeah.
And so I put it out there because it's the fact right now. But again, until there's an application, once we get an application, we'll have to advertise it for 15 days in the newspaper, which depending on when we get it and when we approve that this is a full application, it's got to advertise for 15 days before. So when I get it, it could take 30 to 60 days to get advertised and scheduled into a formal hearing. And that, when it's heard, there will be a public hearing just like this.
correct.
The gentleman, or whoever is proposing something, will get up and speak, tell his side, with everything, show all his pictures and all his information. And then the mayor will ask for anybody else who's in favor of this. And normally, the developer's the Lone Ranger up there by himself. And then he'll say, who's opposed? And that's when y'all will raise your hand and come say whatever it is you want to say. And then they'll close the public hearing and the mayor will ask, do y'all want to move forward with the motion to approve, deny, add additional conditions, additional restrictions that can be added to the property once we see the facts. And then it'll be voted up or down. And then at that point in time, you've got 30 days, Thomas. Those who oppose can sue. And if the applicant is denied, he has 30 days to sue the city. So y'all can get together and sue the city to try and stop it. Or if it's not approved, they have 30 days to sue the city to get us to approve it.
But once again, that's only when they submit that application.
That's right.
Has that gentleman purchased that lot? He still has not.
It's in his contract that he would have to have it rezoned. He thought he could just come in and just talk about it and not produce any documentation. And I told him, no, here's what will be if y'all approve this ordinance. So Thomas will walk through that.
I do want to let y'all know that when I talked to the majority of people here, along with some other people that walked with me, to talk to them, I did tell them today was not the day that y'all were going to make a decision on it. That's going to be at further hearings. But we all agreed, we want y'all, you as the council, know that you've got a lot of people in that community that are very disheartened with this proposal. And we understand that it's not being voted on today, and it's not passing. Nothing's going to go on because you still have the land use moratorium anyway, and then you've got to go through the procedures with this developer that wants to do it. But we want you to see the unified body of this community that's saying, we don't want it.
And
Not based upon what he wants.
I made it clear to him y'all's intent. I've encouraged him to reach out and y'all have a meeting. I've encouraged him to understand, and he was totally, I kid y'all not, he was totally shocked. Because he thinks he's improving the area with this project. I understand, but it's his, if he's spending several $7 million, he thinks he's improving from his side. He would think he has the prettiest property on the street.
Well, we have two alternatives for it. One is a, kind of like a senior center, or a park, dog park along with a community garden.
But I will tell you, he is considering 55 and older. He is considering a 55 and older lead restriction.
But once again, that's when we see that application.
Well, still, all in all, is what we're basically looking at is we want to maintain a very quiet, reserved type of community like we have right now.
And I'll be honest, someone from Atlanta, I guess that would be an improvement if you've always lived in Atlanta. But we don't live in Atlanta. So it's not an improvement.
And I didn't say it was, I said his.
Well, I know.
Okay.
But he needs to understand, we're not Atlanta.
Well, he doesn't live in Atlanta, he lives in another part of town.
Yeah, he
Does
should.
anyone else here would like to step forward and speak?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Y'all will excuse me, my allergies are acting up, and I'll try this again some other day.
Yes, sir. Thanks for coming.
How you doing?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Adam Irwin, 436 Main Street. I just had a question since it seemed, a year or so ago, there was some interest in the property on the end of Arlington Street where folks were going to, had thought about building some apartments, and now the other end of Main Street, folks building some stuff. I went and looked at the city code on historical districts and noticed that of Kentucky, Palmer, Maine, Arlington there, I didn't get all the way over to Long Street because this was a year ago, but noticed that there was about 8 or 9 homes that were right at 100 years old, just in that small section of street. Several more, according to the code, it was 50 years or more that could qualify for the historic district, and there were several more that fit into that 50 years or older. So I was just curious, since this happened last year and seems to happen possibly again, what protections would make in the area? I know it's a lot of work, 3 years, and then you don't get to do some stuff to your homes, and you have to go through a whole lot of paperwork and whatnot, but I was just curious what kind of protections, to use perhaps not the right word, but what would making that area a historic district. Would that protect us from overdevelopment? We'll put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, do you want to speak on that?
Specifically with regard to the historic properties that may be in the historic district, currently, there's a process under the ordinances that requires anybody who does anything exterior to their property to get what's called a certificate of appropriateness from the from a historic preservation commission. City doesn't currently have a historic preservation commission, so that is a process that is based in state law. And what state law says is that if the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, doesn't act within 45 days, then whatever they have requested to do is automatically granted. And unfortunately, there are requirements as to who can serve on a Historic Preservation Commission, and Demorest has had a difficult time finding folks that meet those requirements. So while we do have a Historic Preservation District in place, effectively, because we don't have a commission, it delays anybody who wants to do anything with their property 45 days, but ultimately they can do as they wish, as long as they're otherwise consistent with the building code.
What is the requirement to serve on the commission, on the historic commission?
You've got to, instead of trying to do it from memory, let me just pull it up.
I think it's 30-453, Thomas.
It's what?
30-453. I have it here. You want to read it?
Megan, you want to read it?
Sure. Okay. It shall consist of 3 members appointed by the mayor and ratified by the city council. All members shall be residents of the city of Demorest and shall be persons who have demonstrated special interest, experience, or education in history, architecture, or the preservation of historic resources. To the extent available in the city, at least 3 members shall be appointed from among professionals in architecture, history, architectural history, planning, or related professions. They shall serve 3-year terms. They may not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. In order to achieve terms, initial appointments shall be 1 member for 1 year, or 1 member for 2 years, and 1 member for 3 years. Members shall not receive a salary, although they may be reimbursed for expenses.
Thank you. With that being said, it's so difficult finding 3 members that are professional architects or professional historians. Yes, sir.
Could I suggest that the council maybe consider adjusting that definition to meet the residential members of the city of Demorest?
So we've talked about that several times in the past because this has come up multiple times. Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, that is a state definition, correct?
Definition of the state law.
And that we can't modify that definition because it's a state definition.
You can have a historic preservation. You can have a historic district. There's a lot of towns and cities that have historic districts that don't necessarily comply with the state law for historic preservation commissions. You just don't have, there's not as much process involved, and there's not as much protection for either the city. And some folks want their properties in those districts because it protects their historic value as well. If you've got somebody that's got a 100-year-old home that they've spent tens of thousands to restore, they don't necessarily want, like what may happen in Atlanta, where folks come in and tear down and build what are commonly referred to as mansions.
Well, how did we get in the historic district here in Demorest if we don't meet the requirement for a commission?
A previous council adopted it. From what I can tell, it looked like it was sometime in the early 2010s. But I don't know what the motivations were at the time.
Also, could there be a possibility where if the county has a historic commission, could they be utilized to be able to come over to Demorest to make that decision if they meet the requirements
I
of the state?
believe there's a provision in the law for a joint commission, but it has to be something that both the county and the city want. So in other words, if you were to utilize that process, Habersham County would also have to have a historic preservation district or a historic preservation commission, and then you could have, they could operate jointly. But the county would have to go through the same process and have that in place. And I'm not sure that, I don't know that Habersham County has ever done that.
Well, if they do have it, can we present it to the city to maybe do a joint with the county?
And even though we're working on this tonight, this is a working document, and this is a working body. So anything that comes up in the future, like something like that, absolutely.
So,
I think that it's wise to go forward with that.
So listening to it on how to onboard folks, it sounded like the council could appoint one person for 1 year, and then a second person the next year, and then a third person the third year until you get to that rotating council. So the first year.
Correct, if they have a profession in architecture and a profession in history and live inside the city limits.
Okay. Would, so it doesn't have to be architecture, it could be historical culture?
I think one has to be architecture, one has to be, right, Thomas?
Yes, I believe that's the case.
Would anybody else like to speak? Step to the podium. Speak your name and address, please.
Ruth Sexton.
239 Long Street. She did a well enough job of addressing our concerns with this, but the last council meeting I came to, I heard a lot of concern about lack of funds to repair water lines. And our fire guys are back here lacking what they need to do their job. And when I heard about what was spent on the restrooms down at the city park last year, was that last year?
We'll finish it up in December this month.
What was the budget for that?
So that's a great point. And a lot of those funds come out of SPLOST that were allocated towards park. And that was allocated when we went through the SPLOST several years ago. Rick was on council, our mayor then, during that time when we allocated different funds for different projects. And we allocated some funds towards police cars, some funds towards the park, some funds towards the fire department. And we had to use those funds to those locations out of those SPLOST dollars. So that's where that budget comes from.
So it wasn't city taxes?
That was SPLOST dollars.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense then. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is the end of a process that's been going on for, 16 months when we first imposed the moratorium. There's been a moratorium in place for over a year. We've extended it 3 times, I believe, and effectively it prevents any kind of development in the city of Demorest other than, for instance, Sweetgrass, because that's already a platted subdivision and there's certain other exclusions from that moratorium. But effectively, the council had they wanted to slow down development until there was a new zoning ordinance in place. Demorest has had a land use ordinance in place for many, many years. It was one that it's the map that's to the far, if you're facing the maps, it's the one on the far right, where there were basically 3 classifications of property: low intensity, medium intensity, and high intensity. And the proposed ordinance that council's considering is one that's more what I would call a traditional zoning ordinance, much more like the one that Habersham County has, one that like Cornelia has, Clarksville. In fact, ours was in large measure based upon what Cornelia's ordinance was with some fairly substantial changes. So
you're using this as a start to open that public hearing?
yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And so there's been one of the things that I want to do was to walk through their. It was I had understood, I think like Mark did, that the most recent version of the ordinance, the one that had been considered the last month, was had been up on the website. So that what I had planned to do tonight was walk through a few additional changes that had been made, talk a little bit about the maps and the zoning ordinances that were in place, and then try to answer any questions that folks may have. The other thing that I'm going to do after I walk through the changes, and this is really as much for you all as it is for the audience. I know a lot of these folks have been here a number of the meetings, so they're somewhat familiar with. And if we have to stop and answer questions, we're here as long as we need to be. So let me just walk through those changes that this one was recommended by a citizen who'd brought in some proposed changes. We'd had a definition of assisted living facility that had defined it as residence for, in the previous term, had been frail elderly, and she had made a note that that they're not all frail. So what I had done was I deleted the word frail and then inserted in need of assistance with activities of daily living. For those of you who are involved in any kind of healthcare, that activities of daily living is a fairly understood term. ADL stands for that. That's what it stands for. So that's terminology that is consistent with and is going to be meaningful to anybody who wants to develop something like that. Similar to our Historic Preservation Commission, there's the possibility that at some point, if there's enough development activity, there'll be a separate board that will take care of variances, appeals, and those types of things that in this ordinance is called a Board of Adjustment. But similar to under the current ordinance with the Planning Commission, it provides that if there is no Planning Commission in place, the mayor and council can perform that function. And so the definition of Board of Adjustment in this ordinance is similarly stated that if there's no separate body created or appointed, then the governing authority will function in that way. The citizen that had suggested these changes suggested adding exterminators as an example of business activities that may be service establishments. It's a definition that is stated as including but not limited to, and so they're just having some examples, I think, are sufficient. But we've added in the word the exterminators. There was a suggestion to define in the ordinance allows for what are called plan unit developments, and one of the permitted uses in a plan unit development is hospice care facility. We didn't have a definition of hospice care facility, so I've added a definition in for hospice care facility that is a facility specializing in the care of terminally ill persons. Most of the folks in this room, myself included, probably have personal experience with those types of facilities. They're they're well warranted when necessary. So our definition for land construction and demolition landfill had included in the things that would have been allowed asbestos containing waste. As most folks in here are familiar, that can be problematic. And even if a C&D landfill allows asbestos containing waste, there are certain things that have to be done to it before it can be dumped there. And there's a whole lot more regulation that goes along with that. So that I deleted that type of material from being allowed in a landfill that could be developed in Demorest. I question whether that is going to happen, but then specifically excludes asbestos-containing waste is not being allowed. Frankly, I think under EPD regs, they've got to be a certain size piece of property, and I'm not sure there's other than stuff that Piedmont owns, I'm not sure that there's a sufficiently sized piece of property in Demorest where you could even have one. This change is made in a couple different places. We had the designation office professional district and then what our map had done, when the regional commission designed our map, the blue on the map is the institutional office and professional. Those that are familiar with Demorest will recognize that most of that blue area is either Piedmont, the school system, the hospital, those things that are in fact institutions. There's some office up along Old 441, but in order to make the ordinance consistent with the map, we've simply added that word into the title. All right, so the use chart, there are some changes in this from what had been there in the past. Accessory apartments attached. In other words, if you got an apartment that is attached to the primary structure, usually going to be a house. In agricultural districts, it's a supplemental use. In R1, it is a supplemental use rather than a permitted use. Likewise, in R2. Accessory apartments detached, as long as that they're only one unit, they're permitted in ag. They will be supplemental uses in R1 and R2. Other accessory structures that aren't dwelling units are permitted in any of those districts with a one accessory structure max unless there's a special use permit. Agricultural raising of poultry and livestock. There is a change in the ordinance that defines up in the definitions. It was done prior to this draft, so we didn't look at it. But basically, it excludes what I call what I think most people would understand are industrialized farming operations. They have a particular name. It's something feeding. Rick, what's the name? Do you remember the acronym? I can't remember. But anyway, it's a term that is regulated by both the federal and state government. It's an understood term, and basically this ordinance prohibits those types of uses, whereas in other agricultural areas, it pretty much allows livestock and poultry without significant limits other than what's appropriate on the property. There is one change that in R1 and R2, persons can keep up to 3 poultry birds. This is a note to this chart, but no roosters. Typically, you're going to have folks living in close proximity, so they may want to have fresh eggs, but if they want to do more than that, they need to get their property rezoned to ag. With regard to cemeteries can only be accessory to a place of worship, and then you've got places of worship and that may include cemeteries as an accessory use. Line 22, dwelling townhomes. These are single family attached with fee simple ownership, are limited to 2 units without a special use, and if there any townhomes have to have a special use if you're in R1. In R2, they're permitted, but if they're limited to 2 without getting a special use permit. Duplexes. What's that?
What lot size is it?
We'll get to the dimensions in a minute. Let me finish with this chart, and then we'll get to the dimensions of those various lots. It's the next chart right under here, Mr. Davis. Duplexes, again, limited to 2 units without a special use. Any type of duplex development on R1 requires a special use. Those are permitted in R2, but again, limited. One of the changes between this version and the other version, I'm going to turn off the all markup so it's clear what we're looking at. Right here, manufactured homes, mobile homes, model homes, and modular homes are now all prohibited in the city of Demorest. One thing that's important to note here is that if there is a current use on property, then it is the term that a lot of folks are going to be familiar with is grandfather. So it's not like if there is a mobile home somewhere in the city of Demorest, if the council adopts this ordinance, that suddenly people have to remove their mobile homes, manufactured homes, or something that may fit this definition. So the reason that there's remained defined is so long as that, because there are some, there are certain rules and regulations that go along with those types of structures, and they still need to, even if they're going to remain, even though they're grandfathered, or the more technical term is legal non-conforming use, they still have to comply with the rules and regulations that pertain to those types of particular uses. So here we get to the dimensions table that Mr. Davis was asking about. That if you have a piece of property that is not agricultural and you rezone it to ag, this is not likely to happen, but I suppose that it could. You've got to have 5 acres minimum in order to rezone it to the agricultural designation. The maximum height's 35 feet. That is effectively 3 stories. I think generally speaking, you're not going to be able to do much more than 2 stories and 35 feet, but you may be able to get a 3-story or a split level. Maximum densities of units per acre. A1 is half a unit. So in other words, it's 1 unit per 2 acres. In R1, it's 4 units to the acre as long as there is sewer. And then in R2, the maximum density is up to 7, and then you can go up to 12 units to the acre with a special use permit. Then you have,
Thomas?
yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the table 6.2 that you're talking about, number 1, the minimum lot area to rezone.
Yes.
Why did R2 drop from what was originally on 1 to 0.5?
Because there's part of the problem that we have in Demorest is that if these dimensions are set at too large, then suddenly you have a whole swath of property and lots that are completely non-conforming, and that's going to make it very difficult for people to do things with their property if they want to, because they have a non-conforming lot, if they want to build something new or something like that. So the reason that R2 was set at, in order to rezone to R2, you have to have a minimum of half an acre. Because a lot of the things that you can do in R2, half an acre is sufficiently large. But so that was, I think, what was behind that change. Hope that answers your question.
Well, the reason why I was bringing it up is the property, I know y'all are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but the property that's across the street from us, it's 1 acre. And this now, you've got, if it does get rezoned to an R2, then this minimum lot area is now 0.5. So are you saying that they could easily split that property in 2?
Not easily. I'll say that they'd have to come in front of rezoning, have the public hearings. That's when you would get your time to speak and bring forth everything and change everyone's minds. So that would be the time.
You keep smiling at me because you know I'll be here.
Everybody's welcome.
I want you to wear yourself out tonight.
Oh, don't worry, I got more.
And the other key about this is it's got to have sewer. You better get that kind of density, because that's the key for R2 is you got to have sewer.
And why do we have 4 units per acre on our one? We talk about half-acre lots, right?
An acre is 43,560 square feet. And again, as long as they have sewer, that's roughly a little over 10,000 square feet. That's where the number comes in from for the 4 units per acre. Pretty standard in a lot of areas.
In a lot of areas.
Well, when you look at some areas like Legacy Woods and some of these other areas, that's the standard that they're setting that.
In this area right here, in downtown, in this downtown area, and right here, you can see these smaller lots. In this area, there's a number of lots here, and here, and here that are the seventh of an acre. They're 0.14. If you go to Q Public and just click on the map and then click on these various lots, you will see that a lot of the residential lots in Demorest are very small. And both in the historic, in the older area and in those newer developments that have been done over the last 10 to 15 years.
So I'm still on this 1 acre. It says 4 units, 4 what?
4 dwelling units.
It says 4 with sewer. For what?
Units, houses.
Houses,
Living areas.
apartments. I know Mark had talked about doors. This is doors.
This is about single family
Yes.
under our lot.
And then if you go back up to, duplexes, that's defined as 2. So that would be 4 living units. And then when we go to commercial in a little bit, I got a little confused with units and doors and some of those definitions that I think Thomas has clarified on, because I think that's where some of that confusion come into play, was in that commercial definition too.
I like Mark's definition of a unit, count it as a front door.
But is a front door leading into 4 or 8 apartments?
Well, I asked him that is if you had a duplex and you had a door and you go through that front door and there's 2 doors there, each one of those is a front door, that's just an entry door. 'Cause this man right here asked me that question. I said, well, I'll ask Mark.
That's a good question. And I think that there's another section on apartments that clarifies that too, right, Thomas?
Right. So there are definitions for that. In the definitional section, there's definitions for some of these things that we're talking about. Let me find the definition for dwelling. So you've got dwelling generally, a building other than a manufactured home, mobile home, house trailer, designed, arranged, or used for permanent living and or sleeping quarters, just kind of understood. Dwelling, single family, detached, a building designed or arranged to be occupied by one family only, where each dwelling is located on its own lot in fee simple title. So these terms, and then dwelling, this is the one I was looking for, is dwelling unit. Building or portion thereof, designed, arranged, and used for living quarters for 1 or more persons living as a single housekeeping unit with cooking facilities, but not including units in hotels or other structures designed for transient residence. So basically, if it's got a roof and 4 walls and you can cook your meals there, then it falls within the definition of living unit. And then there's other building codes. In order for somebody to live in some place, for you to get a certificate of occupancy, you've got to have all the other plumbing. But for purposes of defining dwelling units, that's what a dwelling unit is. Basically, it's a place where one family lives. Minimum heated floor areas per dwellings, 1,000 square feet in ag, 1,500 in R1, and 1,000 in R2. And then you've got the various setback requirements. I don't think that those have changed appreciably from what there is currently. We've got the same charts. There haven't been nearly as many changes in those for the non-residential uses. The one change from the last draft that was publicly circulated is barrel pit in even industrial is now a special use. Carnivals are special use across the ones where all the classifications where they're permitted. Junkyards, junk and salvage yards and kennels are special or have been changed to special uses even in the industrial areas. Parking lots, structures off-site are special uses in all zoning classifications. Basically, what that means is you can't have a standalone parking lot or a parking deck or anything like that, like you may see in some areas. Salvage yards have been changed to a special use even in the industrial areas. And self-service storage facilities, what commonly called mini warehouses, again, special uses in all classifications. So in the dimension table, and this is what the mayor referred to, is that there, unlike in some areas, under this ordinance, you can have residential uses within the non-residential zoning classifications. And so, but the maximum density in terms of dwelling units per acre is just under 3 in all of the zoning classifications that allow those. I have a hard time contemplating an example of that unless it was some sort of mixed use where you had, like you see in some towns where you've got residential over retail and that kind of thing in the downtown area that's possible.
Like apartments above commercial.
Apartments above commercial.
And that would be 2.9 per acre.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
If they had an acre, if they've got a third of an acre, then they can only put 1 unit.
Okay. Our own downtown, our downtown buildings that are 2-story or only a very narrow type lot, they probably wouldn't reach an acre on any of those.
So those are all the changes. I know that so what was referred to, and I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know your name, Miss
Marie Evans.
Ms. Evans. When Ms. Evans was up here, Mark and the mayor had indicated that I would walk through the process for an amendment. Do you want me to do that now? Do you want to take?
Yes, go ahead. Use that live example of Johnny's piece. It says this is what he has to provide to make a formal application.
Okay.
Please.
So the process for any kind of amendment is found in this particular, that's what it's called. Basically, the individual who owns the property or the government or somebody on behalf of the owner can initiate a rezoning to change the zoning classification on a piece of property. The application requirements is that there's a fee, there's a form that if this is adopted will be developed. We've got one now that we use, but there will probably be more detail added to it. And then there is a table that specifies the requirements that have to be submitted as part of the initial zoning application. And that table is this table 13.1. It's unfortunate that it's split across pages. Let me do this. That didn't help. So we'll do it this way. So the key is that to these applications and the things that will be analyzed are what's called a letter of intent, the written analysis, a site plan at an appropriate engineering scale. In other words, oftentimes when properties are rezoned, once you have an ordinance like this in place, one of the conditions of a rezoning is that it's zoned to a specific site plan. And what that means is that let's use the property that we've been talking about. Let's assume that his proposal was to put 3 duplex units on that 1 acre piece of property. He would have to present a site plan that would show the layout of where those were, if there was going to be, if he was going to have open space, if they were going to have some sort of detention pond there. I don't know that they would on a 1 acre parcel lays. but there will be a site plan. And so generally speaking, that if they were to approve any type of rezoning for a property and it's site plan specific, I'm having trouble with that word, then that will be made a condition of that rezoning, and they will have to develop that property consistently with that site plan. So assuming that a council, this one or a future council, were to approve a rezoning on that piece of property, that would allow 3 duplex structures, and they showed them on the back side of that property with buffers around the other existing homes there, then that's how they would have to build it. That would be effectively a structure relocation plan that would show where those structures would go. That's the purpose of a site plan. The other thing that they're going to there's other plan requirements that are set forth in these charts, but these analysis requirements, there's 13 or 14 of them. I think there's only 13. There's 13 of them. So the wise developer that wants to rezone a piece of property is going to take this chart, and when they do their letter of intent and their analysis, they're going to analyze what they're asking the council to do according to the factors outlined on this chart. And if there are neighbors, adjacent property owners that want to challenge that, then typically the way the neighbors are going to challenge that is they're going to take these same factors and say that the proposal doesn't meet that. Let's use, for an example, the one that seems to be of most concern to folks in the room would be number 2, whether the proposal will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property. And so the developer is going to say, no, all we're going to do is improve it. It'll be nicely done. The elevations will be pretty. We're going to do lots of pretty landscaping. We're going to have flowers and all that kind of thing. And oh, by the way, the units are going to sell for, they'll start in the high 2s or low 3s. Property values in that area are X. And so once these comps are in the pipeline, everybody's property values in the area are going to go up. It's not going to have any adverse effects. Neighbors are going to come in and say, of course it's going to adversely impact us, and this for the same things and same basic reasons that Ms. Evans was talking about: traffic, noise, what have you. So that's how that process works. If you have somebody who wants to do a rezoning.
Let me add something to that. Because when I get this total package he's going over, and Thomas and I look at it and we say, yes, we have a total package. Once that is done, it becomes public information. That's when you get their full package they gave me. You will see what they wrote in their analysis. You will see everything that council is going to see.
Will you have any type of notice to us that you've received that package so that we can, in fact,
let him answer from a legal side.
So, both under state law and according to this ordinance, the answer to your question is yes. There has to be both an ad run in the Northeast Georgian, and there will be a sign that gets posted on the property that, are our signs yellow? Is that what they are?
Orange.
Orange signs. So there'll be an orange sign pop up. We did something like, what was it we put signs up for?
For the, over here in Hancock Meadows for those variances.
Oh, for the variances. So those of you who live over in that area may have been through there when we had variances in Hancock Meadows about, 6 months ago? They
used to be. But Maria, I think your question is, are you asking as soon as I receive it? Or because what he's saying is, after it's fully accepted, then we'll set forth the advertisement and the signs.
But what I want to know is whether or not, whenever a complete package that you receive, or any of the, once you let the council know you've received that package, when will the public know that you've received it so we can start looking at it? start analyzing it ourselves so that we can pick it apart.
Once it's a complete application, once they've submitted everything, they paid their fee, and Mark stamps it and says this is complete, it's a public record, it's an open record. So
It could happen is.
But my question is when will we know? That,
Once
will we have to constantly keep calling saying, hey, have you received it?
So once that complete packet's received and approved, not approved, but accepted that it's been received in full, then those signs go up that day.
But yes, we can put a notice on the website, we received this, because it could take him, we could reject that application until he gets everything right 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So no clock is started until I get a fully accepted package.
Do we have the ability to look at any of the prior packages before it becomes a complete package? Where you're still looking at it, you picking it apart, will we be able to look at it?
Effectively, no, because what I'm going to tell staff is that until it's complete, don't accept it. So don't take it. So when they bring in a package, whether it's Mark or Megan or whomever looks at it, they should look at it, look at the checklist, and if it's not complete, they hand it back to them and say, go fix this. They forget. What often happens is they don't bring their check. That's what I see a lot of times, and they have to go get their check, and they bring their check back, pay their fee, and then they take it. So at that point in time, it's accepted, but it's not. There hadn't been any analysis at that point. Staff's not looking at it and saying, well, you need to. I wouldn't have 3 units or 3 structures. I'd only do 2 if I were you. That's not what's going to happen at that point. So there's not. I think what you're saying is there going to be multiple iterations. Probably not. I'm not familiar with that happening under an ordinance like this.
When we get the complete package, I can call you. Whenever it's accepted, I don't mind to call and you can share the news. That's what you're getting at. We can make sure that you're in the know.
Okay.
When we get the full package.
Then you have to call everybody else.
Yeah, we'll put you in charge of that.
Don't worry. I'll put a sign up.
We'll see it.
They don't want to spray it on anything. There you go. Well, Alan.
That's what's up there
Yeah.
So.
I have a question. Yes, sir. What about properties in the city limits that are not on sewer? What are the minimum requirements?
They've got public water, it's 25,500 square feet.
It's a half an acre, basically.
Little over half an acre, because you have to have a septic tank. There's certain Department of Health requirements for how much area you need for your drainage field and your.
Remember what you have to have in today's standards.
Right.
You have to have room for today, and you got to have room for tomorrow when it fails. And so, you cannot use any land to count that's under the house or under the driveway. And those aren't city ordinances, that's state law with the health department, because they come out, you stake out the house, they see the plan, and say whether you got enough room for both. Because there's a lot of lots, you will see that they fail, there's not enough room to do another septic tank on the problem. That homeowner will have a major issue. So that's why they've changed that. It used to be just today's, not tomorrow's.
Promise you done with your changes? Okay. You ready to open that up for comments?
Let's talk about, go to the part where's the fees at?
Well, the fees are in.
Because is that something, that's where I was thinking that we have to, where are we setting those fees from?
Fees are going to be set by resolution, just like.
I understand, but is that something that you're making a recommendation?
No, I don't have a recommendation about what fees you all charge. It's going to depend upon how many consultants you're going to have to engage to review this stuff, and you're going to set your fees according to what you wind up having to pay consultants.
So that didn't fall under your contract?
No, that's not in this.
I understand, but we still have to.
You do need that, yeah.
once you're done with yours, ready to open up for public comment. All right. If anyone would like to speak on land use.
We need to talk about the map.
Okay, please.
Thomas, maybe you get him that microphone. Sorry. Thank you.
So, y'all, folks have been looking at the map, but there are two things that I want to point out, or three. There's one area that I want to point out that's changed from the map that you all may have seen last, that has been in here at City Hall, is this area right around here. There were, on the one that was done for us by the Regional Commission, around this purple piece, which is light industrial, all of those, basically the 12 o'clock, and then everything from, let's say, 4 o'clock to around to 8 o'clock had been R2. Those, other than the smallest piece right there at the 6 o'clock point, those others, what?
That's the depot, which has 2 units, and there could be working for a third unit in an existing building. So that qualifies under as multifamily R2.
So those other 3 parcels around that, around, other than the depot, will be changed to R1. They were changed by hand on this map, but if this is the map that's adopted by council, we'll have the Regional Commission reproduce that off their printer, and then the mayor and Megan will sign that one. But that, I did want to point out that that's different.
That other color that's right there beside the purple, that is one of 2 mini storage buildings. So talk about that one up by the Chevron station up at the end of Demorest area.
Oh yeah, we do have, in addition to that, there's the purple is light industrial.
No, purple is.
Yeah, purple's light industrial. In the way this ordinance is written, self-storage units, mini warehouses are contained within light industrial. So that's why, although it may not necessarily be intuitive, that's why we have light industrial in those areas. But those are mini storage facilities and not junkyards or things like that. Any questions about the map? Yep.
The orange letter, is that 441?
Right here?
Yes.
Yes.
And then that little blue square, what is that?
Where I have the pointer
Right itself then.
at?
What's that?
That is where, what's the name of that place now? Farmhouse, the coffee shop?
Yeah.
The reason that is blue, wait, I'm wrong about that. What is, that's not the coffee shop. What is that piece right there?
I think it's that, is that the piece that's on Laurel Lane, or what's the road name? The scale.
Tomlin
Tomlin
Alley.
Piece?
It's what?
Is it not one of Piedmont's piece?
I'm assuming that is
That's
that.
what it is, because we're talking about that little piece.
Yep.
I am pretty sure that is something that would be Piedmont's, but we'll make a note of that, and I will verify that on Q Public.
Isn't that, is that Demorest piece?
Say that again?
Is that where Holden is?
No, Holden's gonna be all right here in the, downtown district.
Oh, okay.
Because see, there's Georgia Street going up.
Oh, that's the church.
That's the church right
Yeah.
there. That's the church.
Oh, that's the
church.
church.
Yes, right there.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. All right, we're opening this up for public discussion. So if you have something to say, please step forward to say your name and address.
You know, it's too hard behind the process.
So I believe you said, Mark, that the reason Demorest Mount Airy is red business is that it's a state highway?
Yes, ma'am.
But other than the schools at this end and schools at this end and then those storage units that got put in, this is all residential through here. It always has been.
Right, yes, ma'am.
So
What happens on a state route, you see houses turn into offices, you see conversion of some of those properties. Because if you look at Central Avenue right out here, you still have residential, you have houses that are turning into office. That is something where you could see that, because it's kind of like the highest and best use of the property, where somebody could get their biggest return on the sale of their property, or single family residence on a state highway. You don't see new things being built. It has older homes on it because the land is worth more as a commercial use or a business use. So that's part of an appraiser's. It's part of, if you take the other map back there, the last map was updated in 2018, and the map before that was updated in 2013. And you can see those, they have the same zoning as that does. So nothing changed on that piece. Johnny Gunn's piece is included in that same map back there. We could go back to 2013. You can't find maps prior to 2013. Somebody asked, when did it change? We don't have any records. But the 2013 map is where those properties go back to. So we didn't downgrade any of those properties because they bought it since 2013. It's had that business zoning. Nothing that we did or they did during this process changed that. They put that property back the same.
So how do residential rules apply to somebody whose property is technically classified as business?
They can still use it. They can still use it. Somebody could buy Johnny's lot and build a single family house, but they're gonna have to pay a much higher price.
But I mean, couldn't a residence, one of the homes here, couldn't they operate as a business?
If they would have to follow, yes, they would have to follow under what's called B1 or B2. And those charts are what's gonna be our Bible if this is approved. Because if you want to change something, look at the charts to see if your business of XYZ is allowed or not, or it's a special use. And then you'll go to the next chart that tells you how and what you can do there. And then the meat of this thing of what Thomas was going through is all the details. So you look at the chart first, and you look to see what you can do on that property, just to see, can I even do this? That would be the process. So that map, the colors changed from that map over there. A few properties on Demorest Mount Airy, the Hendricks property that is owned by Piedmont was a doctor's office. We did not color it blue or institutional. Its highest, best use would be an office again. Piedmont's maintenance building and the fire station is not blue. It's zoned for another use, being the highest and best use of those properties. So things changed like that, but nobody was downgraded from that map to this map. That's the key.
And then as far as classifying something agricultural, is that just based on the amount of land that's
That
there?
land, majority of that is where you have a lot of land. Every parcel in that is not a 5-acre tract, but it's where somebody could assemble land. But right now, under the current agricultural zoning, you can build one house on 5 acres. So they would have to come in, they say they assemble 20 acres over there, they want to become R1. They would have to come in and do this whole process of the application. So that really protected that area. And when we started this process, Rick and Jennifer was kind of asking about their property, just being in agriculture. And as we looked at these areas, they made comments about the streams and the creeks and things of that sort. So we looked at that and totally expanded that from what's over there in that, from going back to 2013 to 2018. So that was a safe way, because a lot of that green, sewer's not there. Sewer's not in those areas. A developer would actually run the sewer at their cost to have that access.
And this back here, this is where the pump station is, right? Back in this area?
Where are you pointing at?
Water treatment?
Yes, it's all the way down Ivy Street there. And so that would be that's the city's piece should be blue. Is that what you're asking? I'll have to come over there with you to look at Ivy Street to see. Look at where. Right. Hang on, we'll look at it together. Ivy Street. Yeah. So would our sewer plant not be in the city limits? Is it really?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's why you're not seeing that right there. Because that's where it ends. So all of this is going to be your sewer plant.
And it's county.
This county. This up here is the church, Mount Carmel. This right here is the hospital. This right here is the Demorest Cemetery. This is 365 runs right here, and that's Piedmont's land. This is out Double Springs. There's a, what do you call this one? It's a, I don't think it's a church. What is it, Donnie? It's a non-profit, so it's blue. They own like 3 or 4 buildings in there right there. It's right there by the quarry and stuff.
Freedom Hill, I think.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good question. I learned something. I didn't know that it wasn't in the city. Thank you, Rick. Okay.
Would anybody else like to speak?
I did find a 2002 plat when Larry LaPrade, I think it went to Whitlock, and it shows our 1 acre, shows a house and a mobile home on it.
Where's that at? Show me. I don't know where that property is.
It's the property.
Oh, okay. Well, you tell me the Johnny Gunn piece, and I would know that.
Johnny Gunn.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay. I did not know that.
But that was back in 2002.
Yeah.
House, and this house continued down Long Street. The Tinch owned the house right here. It was moved down. Matter of fact, Charlotte said it was a fantastic
It was an
day to
interesting
watch.
sight to watch.
I bet.
But that house
I was
was,
looking to see this. I didn't know that. So.
well, I've got Miss
Building it with
Pat
gravel.
looking
I'm
in
sorry,
her
what?
house, her next door, to see whether or not there's a zoning map, but we may have an issue of the sunlight bleaching it, but I've got somebody else that's also looking for us to find the prior zoning map.
But that's good to have. But if they approve this map as 2013 and 2018, they'd be working off of this.
But this is still based upon what you've got down here. This was a high intensity, this is
That's
now
correct.
business.
Correct. But the use, we would have to find in our minutes. We don't have a lot of good records. Because we don't know what year to start to look for that, to see in the minutes what year did it change.
So you don't have any minutes or anything past 2013?
I have not found, Megan, do we have, there's some, but what year you want me to look at? What month you want me to look at? You see what I'm saying? And it's a needle in a haystack, because I don't have any, I'm turning one page at a time.
And it's just big boxes at a warehouse somewhere?
No, they're in
They're
a
here.
binder. They're in a binder, but we don't have for every meeting. Basically.
Ma'am?
It doesn't relate to them.
Okay?
So our records were kept in storage underneath the police department in the basement and it closed. So,
Would anybody else like to speak on the land use?
let's change that now.
Yes.
He's just verifying his piece. It was in the bag.
Partner sold this one, and it's to the Henderson County Federal Credit Union on November 15th, 2019.
You good?
That's when it was still on the plat, that's what was in the county records, 2002. That's the date of the plat.
Jerry,
He said he was good with his.
I do want to revisit the historical later. I mean, that's very interesting, because if we've got Piedmont College inside Demorest city limits, surely to goodness, we've got somebody.
Somebody that's a professional.
Yeah.
We had plenty of history people, but none of them lived in the city limits.
But they work in the city limits, can't we, like, annex them in? 8 hours a day?
Would anybody else like to speak on the land use map or the land use ordinance before we move on? Are you stepping off, state your name and address?
Make sure he's here.
Had to open my mouth.
I'm McCollum, 445 Long Street. Where is the historic district in Demorest? Because I didn't know we had one.
We'll show you on the regional map.
Okay.
2018. This is all, everything. Here is Fourth Street. Going up through here, up to Cedar, and down, it takes in this property. And then this is the school here, got to take in the ball. Back, over, and around. So now move over to the next. It is in this color, historic district. So it takes in the same place, up to Georgia to Cedar, down and around. See, this is all.
Thomas, when you do this sort of thing on the new maps, is that where we have to together the same around commissioners, right?
Okay.
We've let, because,
For those houses.
let me address that.
Can't answer that question. Legal over there to Thomas.
So because we had, the city went through the process whenever it did to adopt the historic district and go through that entire state-required process, it's not as simple as just deleting it, even if we wanted to. You basically have to reverse that process. You have to have the same public hearings, give the same public notices and all that, because in theory, people who have structures in that district have come to rely on the fact that they're in a historic district, notwithstanding the fact that maybe we haven't been able to do the processes that have been required. So it's not like we can just delete it. You've got to basically unwind it. So that's why it's still in place, even though we have this problem with being able to staff the commission.
Thank you.
So one thing that until I was looking at this today for final adoption, what the council is actually going to do is they're going to repeal Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of Chapter 30. That's basically your we call it a land use ordinance, but that's basically your zoning ordinance. And then there's going to be a separate ordinance that creates a new, everything that we've been looking at. It's titled zoning rather than land use. And the way that Muni Code likes to operate is everything needs to be in alphabetical order. So everything that's 30-1 or 30-121 or what have you is going to be renumbered to 89. So it'll be 89-10, 89 you're going to create a new chapter in your zone, in your ordinances called Chapter 89 zoning. And what we have been looking at is going to be that Chapter 89.
Thomas talked about the number, did you say the number of pages?
One thing that I think has been frustrating to some that have reviewed this is there haven't been page numbers on any of the drafts of this thing. And that is because, as I've alluded to earlier, we publish this on MuniCode, and so it's online, and there are no page numbers on the online version. MuniCode will produce a hard book. I don't know that we've gotten an updated one recently. They will produce it, but it's expensive and there's no point because it changes all the time. So, but what I told Mark that I would do is that once this is adopted, we will PDF the Word version after we send it to MuniCode, and then we will put page numbers on the PDF version that is maintained here at City Hall so that if folks want to come in and look at it, so for ease of reference, but don't think that the page numbers that are in whatever you get here in City Hall is necessarily going to be something you're going to find on MuniCode.
Thank you. All right.
I do have a question. Is there any way for the different tables, you've got 6.1, 2, 7, 13. Is there any way to have that header when you go from one page to the next page?
It cuts it off.
Yeah, because then you have to go back to the very first page of it. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly the problem you're alluding to. I don't know that there's a way to do that electronically. I don't know. I don't know Word well enough to do that. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't promise you that it's not going to get.
That's clerical. We'll figure that out.
We'll check on that.
It can be done. I know that because I've done it before.
Really sexy. You turn that around, right? We were here in September. If we add however many put on that property, where we get our water? We're having a
I didn't understand where you said.
Appalachia. No, however many buildings are put on that property,
Okay.
we're buying water from Toccoa. What if they run out? Where are we gonna get it?
Well, we get 2 million gallons a day from Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
We get up to 1 million gallons a day from Toccoa. We're getting, I think I said 6 million out of one of our wells. The other well can produce 1.3 million gallons a day. That we have to do one of two things. We either have to run lines from Garrison Road well over to Baldwin's plant. And that's going to cost the city $2 million. Or we build a water plant near the site of Garrison Road, which would cost me $5 million. And then that water in that area of that zone, of multiple zones we got throughout the county, it cannot leave that zone. So if we build a plant, I can only keep that water right there. But another $4 to $5 million is to come from the plant and enclose everything into the city's water system. So it's a $10 million deal to do all of that.
So what's it cost for us to pay Baldwin and Toccoa?
Well, this past month we paid Baldwin $125,000 and we paid Toccoa $37,000. So typically we're only using 250,000 gallons a day from Toccoa, but because of water demand, as dry as it's been, as hot as it's been this summer, that's where I'm using way more water, and Toccoa's water costs a lot more than Baldwin's. And but I can get up to 2 million, and we got close in July, August, and September, hitting our 2 million gallons a day from Baldwin. So we had to turn on the other system from Tacoma. Garrison Road well can cover a lot of that. We're working on the plan, whether it's the 2 million or the 10 million. So we started that process of getting the analysis right now.
So what you're saying is we have enough for ourselves, it's just out there for what we can't do the other.
Correct, and it's costing us more because just like your water, you get a minimum 2,000 gallons for this much. If you go above that, it's this much. If you go above that, it's this much. We have those same tiers of bigger numbers for cost as we take more water down from them. So if we're using 250, we're at this price. We use the full 1 million gallons a day. I just don't recall that cost per, but it quadruples from that original number. Same thing with Baldwin too. So the water that we get out of our well is at a cheaper cost, but I've got the debt service to do one or two of these items.
This is essentially, I understand what you're starting to ask about capacity. And when somebody submits plans to us, then we submit those plans to our engineer and say, hey, do we have water and sewer capacity to serve this? And that goes for anything, even if somebody comes and submits something in for one house or something else, you call Brian and say, hey, we have capacity.
But typically, the engineer will do a full analysis. If it's like 5 or more houses, or if it's a business that could use a lot of water, that way we determine what size meter they need, and we talk about their price structure on that. For instance, the apartments down here that were built, they were not in the city limits. And they're on a different rate structure. They have the last, what's called a master meter that's allowed in the city. Other than requiring them, there's 142 units, there's 142 water meters set. But if you got 142 units and only 100 units are occupied, we're charging you for all 142 units. Because we don't know if somebody's occupied or not. So you get charged for that under the next scenario. So all that was rate study and capacity study. Right now, Baldwin has a permit for 3 million gallons a day at their plant. We get 2, they get 1. And their capacity of the plant is to add another 1 million when they're ready to go, to have 4 million a day. So our same engineer that works for us works for Baldwin. And so some people can say that's a problem, but we'll deal with that on another day. So he knows the analysis of Baldwin's capacity, of what's the additional water meter sales are. Last month, we sold 8 additional meters. Today alone, Ryan took out 10 water meters for multiple people. That's just the way the process came through. So we're selling a lot more meters continually, and Baldwin could be doing the same thing. So that's why the consultant knows both sides of what we're seeing to make sure the capacity is there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean,
It's all complicated.
Well, yeah, it's cheaper to get it from somewhere else than to annex our own, kind of like oil.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, you brought up that Baldwin is getting, well, it has got plans for 1 more million.
They
So
could
they're gonna be
request it.
4?
They could. They have it.
Well, if they do, then can we buy more from Baldwin and forget about Tacoma?
If we get
Since it's more expensive.
We're under the land use, so let's stay under the land use. We'll talk
Just
about
a
that.
thought.
Okay. Andrew, I think you wanted to speak on this?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the chickens and the residential plant.
Yes, sir.
Is there no roosters?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know chickens, I'm just curious what a rooster could do if you have one or not.
I think it's the noise.
Yeah.
So it's really the noise that the rooster makes?
Will you speak into that so everybody can really hear you?
I think it's the noise.
So this is the house behind us here. I think when we first had our meetings, you know, little town hall meetings, you could hear the rooster. So what happens here?
I don't know if they have a rooster. You would have to file a complaint with code enforcement. Would you like to do that?
No.
We make a motion to
All right, if we don't have any more comments, we'll move forward for a motion to accept, the zoning and accept the zoning map. Thomas, how do you want that?
I think there needs to be 2 votes.
Okay.
Don't have this down.
Well, actually, it's going to be long, so you're probably just going to want to say, so moved.
Okay.
So, the first thing will be, sorry, let me get it open.
All right.
First ordinance is going to be an ordinance to amend Chapter 30 of the ordinances of the City of Demorest to repeal Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of Chapter 30, to repeal conflicting laws and regulations, and to provide for an effective date and other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Council, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion as stated.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second? All those in favor to move forward?
The second ordinance will be an ordinance to amend the ordinances of the City of Demorest to create and adopt Chapter 89 zoning, to provide for definitions, to establish zoning districts, to provide for non-conforming situations, to provide for regulations for residential zoning districts, to provide for regulations for non-residential zoning districts, to provide for special uses, to provide for parking and loading, to regulate signs and murals, to provide for property appearance standards, to provide for amendments and application and hearing procedures, to provide for permits and certificates, to provide for administration and enforcement, to provide for appeals and variances, to regulate watersheds and wetlands, to provide for plan unit developments, to repeal conflicting laws and regulations, and to provide for an effective date and other purposes.
All right. Did y'all get that, or are you going to repeat?
Make motion for it, sir.
Thank you, sir. A second? All those in favor to move forward with that? All right, thank you, guys. Next is approval of the minutes from October the 1st. Council, I assume y'all had a chance to look through those. If so, we'll entertain a motion to move forward as written.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you. A second? Second. All those in favor to move forward with this, approve this? Very good. Yes, sir. Hold on, sir. I voted for you. Okay. Vote yes. Okay, thank you, sir. Next is consideration of ARPA funds. These were outlined. All right, this is outlined to spend those grant funds. There's federal funds of $441,000. We need a motion to approve those 6 line items. It's right items.
Make a motion to approve, the designation of the ARPA funds for these 6 line items listed on this, email, striking out number 6 items.
Thank you, sir. Second. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, next is moving forward with approving, something that's already been approved before, but a little bit more clarification. Is the Communications International invoice. This is the grant fund come in to pay for the radio, and this, the fire radio. And this is to, allow that $81,000 check to go out. Any motion to approve that?
First, I want to thank everybody that played a part in getting us that grant in the past for this, because it saved the city a lot of money. We would have to spend anyway on the new radio system that Harris County is going to have for public safety. So I'll make the motion to approve pay this invoice, which matches what we approved in December of last year.
Thank you. A second? All those in favor? Very good. We get to skip manager's reports.
I have no idea. The tree lighting, the Christmas tree lighting, is December the 5th from 6:30 to 7:30 downtown. And Megan, the Demorest Elementary students will be performing.
Yes, the choir.
So last year, with having the children there perform, we had a lot of people show up for Santa Claus. And the other thing is, Chief, can you come forward? Ms. Gail Moore asked me a question, wants to know, what are you doing in advertising or attracting new full-time and part-time?
So all of our stuff is on Indeed, it's on the government labor, Department of Labor, Georgia Department of Labor websites, and we're doing word of mouth. Talking to some firefighters, and all around looking for people, but I can only hire so many, because I don't have, I just got approval for some turnout gear, so I can do some hiring. I can only hire part-timers. That doesn't solve our problem.
So you're not advertising like in the Atlanta Constitution, Gainesville Times?
I don't have a budget for that. That costs money to start advertising like that.
Why do you charge?
Newspapers are expensive to advertise.
Yeah, that's why I use Indeed. Indeed is a free ad, and I've got 6 applications right now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
But they're all for full-time positions, because I have a full-time spot open. I've got no one applying for any of my firefighter positions, part-time.
Are we advertising on
There's no one
Facebook?
applying. The only people that are applying for part-time firefighter positions are people that are not firefighters. And I don't have the funding to spend $6,000 to $8,000 to send them to the academy, and I don't have a system here in our small department to train them. It's 450 hours of training to do it within 1 year. I don't have a way to do that without sending them out, so I don't have the funds for that. But we're doing the best we can to hire.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I think we'd be willing to hear a minimal advertising deal from Northeast Georgia and all the sister papers.
Next is ending our meeting with another public comment. I'd first like to say Halloween. Halloween is a great hit. Our staff put together a fantastic event downtown. Please make it next year. I appreciate all the council members and everything you guys did. There's so many people come out. How many people do you think come through?
Oh, gosh. I mean, a lot of, how much candy did you bring, Lonnie? You went through candy, fire department went through all their candy.
We gave out, I think it was $200 worth of candy in an hour and a half. And then the police department was kind enough to bring us a few more bags. And we prepackaged that. Nikki prepackaged 300 bags, individual bags.
Sweet.
And we totally, and normally I'm like, and that's why she prepackaged them. And it didn't help us out.
Sweetbreads went through 500 homemade marshmallows, so, I mean.
Jerry was
we went
getting
through
out
300
big candy bars at his house. He ran out, he was giving away fine china, chairs, furniture. Whatever it says.
But it was a great sense of community, and I appreciate everybody coming together for that. Great.
The blue guy was a referral from Jerry and his wife. They had that gentleman at the torch, at school or something.
He's at my little boy's school.
And if y'all didn't see him, he is $100 an hour, and he was magnificent. And he lives in Hell, and he's trying to expand his business. So if anybody needs something like that for an event,
Jimmy has
I mean,
But I really do appreciate that. I also appreciate all the work the staff, everyone put together, and the community put together, with our zoning map, with our land use to get this to this point. Because this has been 15, 16 months in the working, and I don't want to do a approved version, but a working version that we can modify if we see.
Tom, is there anything we have to do from the moratorium to end?
I think it ends of its own terms on Friday. Yeah, so it'll end by its own terms on Friday. You all, this is a special call meeting. Yeah, it'll just have to end on Friday.
And so if anybody wants to fill out any application, we can start accepting those on Monday. On any topics, not just one.
Do we know when the new, zoning ordinance gonna be online? The final revision?
Signed, yeah, I mean, as soon as, I can put it on there tonight, it just won't be signed.
I sent her the final version, so
So who all has to sign it?
Jerry,
Just you two? So,
well, you can have to list the,
and I have to sign it, but I'll be here tomorrow for court, so.
so everybody should go sign it tomorrow, and then we'll go from there. Making sure that it's up.
Very good. Are there any other public comments?
Mayor, I do want to make the point, we should have done this when we adopted the ordinance. I do want to make the point that the zoning map was present in the chambers tonight. It was reviewed by the mayor and city council in the version of the map that was present in council chambers tonight that we discussed. Will be taken to the regional commission and printed, and that will be signed by the mayor and the clerk. And that will be the official zoning map of the city of Demorest until and unless amended.
Thanks. And it will look just like that, and we'll take it and get it framed. So,
Then it also will be on the website for the city, along with the new zoning.
so it is on there already, because that's not the only way you can drill down into it is.
Well, I had looked at it and it still had the one with all the sticky notes all over it.
Yeah, because we haven't finalized it.
Yeah.
That's what.
Well, that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
if that's gonna be.
It could take them a week to 10 days to run this, but I'm gonna drop it off to them tomorrow. I just can't.
Okay.
and you won't find it in the same spot, you'll have to go under the ordinances.
Right.
There'll be land use and ordinances.
Does anyone have a reason to go into executive session? All right, none heard, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, sir. Second.